Hi everyone, I'm Traci Fenton, founder of WorldBlu, and today we're going to talk about freedom-centered leadership, the 3 key attributes of a fearless leader. Do you lead yourself and others with fear and control, or freedom with accountability? Most so-called leaders operate with a fear-based mindset, which leads to a fear-based leadership style. Fear-based leaders tell employees what to do because they think they can't think for themselves, organize everyone into a command and control hierarchy with them at the top, withhold all information except what others absolutely have to know, rarely provide positive feedback or encouragement, and they love to use fear to motivate people, pull rank, or just go on a power trip. Have you ever worked with this kind of fear-based leader? I bet you have. We all have. And perhaps you've even been this kind of leader. Working with a fear-based leader is completely draining, wrecks your self-confidence, increases your stress level, and makes you feel like you're never good enough. That's why around 75% of people who voluntarily leave their job do so because they have a crappy fear-based boss. But what if you could learn to lead yourself and others from a place of freedom and possibility rather than fear and control? Just imagine the level of confidence you would have. Just imagine the kind of team spirit you could create. Just imagine the type of breakthrough success you could achieve. How do you get there? With freedom-centered leadership. Freedom-centered leaders find ways to give meaningful power to their people. Freedom-centered leaders work hard to create the kinds of environment that helps everyone achieve their fullest potential. Freedom-centered leaders are fair, humble, take accountability for their actions, and are always learning. They aren't afraid to admit they may have gotten something wrong. In short, freedom-centered leaders lead from a place of freedom rather than fear and control. Today, I'm going to teach you the 3 attributes of a freedom-centered leader, so you can experience the kind of breakthrough impact this style of leadership can have on you and your team. That's what happened at Nearsoft, a WorldBlu certified freedom-centered organization. Their top leaders decided they wanted to create an organization where everyone could learn how to lead themselves and others with freedom rather than fear and control. The result? Well, according to their COO, Matt Perez, we've been a part of the WorldBlu community since 2009, and with WorldBlu's help, we've grown more than 12 times since then. Our growth and success is a direct result of our culture, which is guided by the freedom-centered and democratic principles that WorldBlu represents. Many of the top leaders listening to this presentation are wondering how to deal with the effects of the pandemic, how to have better communication on their team, how to have a greater sense of ownership and accountability, how to deal with low morale and fear, how to keep people engaged, avoiding burnout, and more. And I hear you, and I know these are your needs. And you might be surprised to learn that the issues we think we are dealing with as leaders are not usually the real issues, only the symptoms. That's why it's critical to get underneath the symptoms to address the real leadership problems you and your colleagues are dealing with right now. And that's what I'm going to teach you now. For almost 25 years, I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of top CEOs and top leaders at leading brands such as Zappos, WD-40, Mindvalley, DaVita, Wyden, GE Aviation, Hulu, Pandora, and more, from over 100 countries worldwide. I've been blessed to receive numerous awards and recognitions for my leadership work, including being recognized as a top 50 leadership innovator in Inc. magazine, alongside other top leadership thinkers such as Simon Sinek and Brené Brown. I've earned the Game Changer Award for outstanding results in shaping the world, and I was just named this year, in fact, a 2020 World Changing Woman in Conscious Business winner. Recently, I also received the honor of being recognized as a Marshall Goldsmith Top 100 coach. And after almost 25 years of research and experience, I've identified the 3 attributes that make an individual a freedom-centered rather than fear-based leader. As I teach you about these 3 key leadership attributes, I invite you to think about how you are showing up as a leader in these 3 areas. We all know it's easy to point the finger at others who are lacking in leadership skills, but in reality, we can only change ourselves. So that's what I invite you to focus on today. Then you will be in a better position to understand others and be able to model for them a more freedom-centered leadership style as well. First, let's discover the 3 key freedom-centered leadership attributes by debunking 3 main leadership myths. All right, myth number 1. Leadership starts with habits, skills, and/or what your title is. Well, the truth is, freedom-centered leadership actually starts with having high self-worth. What does it mean to have high self-worth? Self-worth is how you feel about yourself. Having high self-worth means you love who you are despite your imperfections. Self-worth is not the same as self-confidence. One can have high self-confidence while also having low self-worth. Some of the characteristics of low self-worth behavior are never feeling good enough, hot and cold behavior, being manipulative or overly self-critical, negative, arrogant, lacking in personal accountability, self-centered, dramatic, controlling of others. These are just some of the characteristics of low self-worth behavior. Now, some of the characteristics of high self-worth behavior are feeling good enough even when you make a mistake, being consistent, having high integrity, operating in freedom, forgiving, being positive and joyous, being humble, being personally accountable, exercising self-control, being focused on serving others rather than serving yourself, and not being dramatic. So what's the relationship between self-worth and the way that we lead? Well, it took us almost 15 years to understand this critical correlation that most people miss. Low self-worth leaders never feel good enough, so they engage in toxic behaviors that put others down so they can feel better about themselves. This can look like all kinds of unhealthy so-called leadership behavior, such as manipulation, bullying, racism, sexism, rankism, ageism, every kind of ism you can think of, and much more. Low self-worth leaders are always thinking about themselves and what others think of them, rather than thinking about how they can serve others. They're in constant service to their insecurities instead and their egos. Low self-worth leaders feel threatened by other people's success and therefore will not work to create a freedom-centered team or organization where everyone can succeed, because that would undermine their very sense of authority and significance. In our work with hundreds of top CEOs and leaders around the world, we've found that leaders who have a high sense of self-worth are the most open to the idea of leading with freedom rather than fear and control. They are the most open to the model we teach, which is freedom at work. High self-worth leaders are not threatened by others' success. They want to create an environment where everyone can shine. High self-worth leaders see themselves as already good enough. They don't have to go get good enough or prove anything. They lead from their completeness. Therefore, they conduct themselves from a place of freedom rather than fear and control, and they expect others to do the same. So, where is your level of self-worth? We like to ask it this way. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your level of self-worth and why? I want you to give yourself a number right now. Just go with your gut feeling and write it down. Let's go back to the question. Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your level of self-worth and why? All right. Now, why do you feel the way you do about yourself, right? Why did you give yourself the number that you gave yourself? Well, sometimes people like to tell me that their level of self-worth changes depending on the day and what's going on in their life. And I will address that issue in another talk. But for now, let's just start with this key question. Again, I want you to think about this and just go with your gut and write down a number and just give me a whole number here, right? Don't be like 3.2, On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your level of self-worth, not self-confidence, but how much you love yourself, how much you like yourself, how secure you are with who you are. Give yourself that number, and then I want you to think why. Jot it down on a piece of paper, jot it down on your phone or whatever's available to you right now. Think it in your mind. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your level of self-worth and why? And why? Think about this for a moment. Okay. Do you have your number? Don't overthink it. Just go with your gut and write down one whole number. Okay? No decimals here. They're not necessary. All right. Do you know why you gave yourself that number? Here at WorldBlu, we consider the high self-worth zone, if you will, to be an 8 or higher. If you gave yourself an 8 or higher, chances are that you consider yourself to have high self-worth. Now, people often ask me, does anyone ever give themselves a 10? And my answer is, of course they do. Of course, there are always people who are egotistical and lack self-awareness and self-honesty who will always give themselves a 10, even if it's not really how they feel or even if it's not true. But genuinely giving yourself a 10 in self-worth does not mean you think you're perfect and don't have anything to keep learning or getting better at. Giving yourself a 10 means that you understand your inherent worth. That's what this is really about, is understanding your inherent worth. I have always felt that I'm a 10, and there are still tons of things that I'm working on as a leader. Doesn't mean I'm not constantly, making mistakes and needing to improve, but I know what my worth is. I know my worth is a 10. But the question is not, what do you think you still need to improve? The question is, do you know your inherent worth or not? This is so important as a leader because your sense of self-worth will impact your behavior and therefore the way you lead yourself and others, period. I remember a few years ago, I was giving a speech and I asked a room full of about 100 CEOs this question about their level of self-worth. And in that room of 100 CEOs, how many do you think gave themselves an 8 or higher? 80? 50? 20? Well, the answer is 3, my friends. 3 out of 100 CEOs gave themselves an 8 or higher. Yes, it was just 3 leaders who gave themselves an 8 or higher in their level of self-worth. It's sad but true. Most people really do struggle with their self-worth, and this impacts our leadership behavior in so many ways. Now, think about the level of self-worth of the people on your team. All right, just think about the people that you work with the most and kind of go with your gut on what you think their level of self-worth, not confidence, self-worth may be. If you wonder why you have problems, okay, so you think about people on your team, I can guarantee you that the people with the lowest level of self-worth on your team are the ones creating the most drama, confusion, issues, and headaches. They're the ones that are most doing that, I can promise you. Think about who your biggest problem is on a 1 to 10, where do you think their self-worth is? They're not gonna be a 10. Am I right? I know I'm right, my friends, because we've done this for so many years. Okay, they are doing this. They're creating this drama, they're creating this behavior because they have low self-worth. We used to have these very issues on our team until we learned how to recognize the symptoms of low self-worth. And now we only hire people who are an 8 or higher in self-worth and are willing to keep growing and improving. And guess what? We don't have internal drama. Instead, we have a high-performing team of leaders who get along well, have each other's backs, and can focus on achieving our vision of seeing 1 billion people living, leading, and working in freedom. And it's such a joy to work with this incredible team. Now, here's a key point I want you to understand. My personal belief is that we all are 10s. We all are 10s right now. Whether you're ready to accept it or not, you're a 10. I firmly believe that. I know that to the core of my being. Many years ago, when I was living in Washington, D.C., I saw a city bus drive by one day. And on the side of that bus was a big ad for Citibank. The Citibank logo was in the upper right corner, and in the background of the ad, was all white. And then in big black letters, it said, "You were born pre-approved. You were born pre-approved. Yes, you were born pre-approved, my friend. That's what's true about each one of us. You don't have to earn your worth. You are already worthy. You are already a 10. You are already a 10. And today, if you haven't yet given yourself a 10, I want you to start practicing just for one day what it's like to think, act, and most importantly, lead like a 10. Just try it out and see how it feels. And again, being a 10 doesn't make you arrogant. I know some of you are going, oh my gosh, I can't even think about this, right? It doesn't mean you're perfect, and it doesn't mean you have nothing left to learn. It simply means that you know your inherent worth. We all have inherent worth, regardless of how much money you make, your title, where you went to school, how you were raised, the color of your skin, or the country you may live in. Again, you were born pre-approved, my friend. And your job as a leader is to work on your own self-worth and help others do the same. When you do, I promise a lot of the behavior issues you might be dealing with on your team and even in yourself, they're going to go away. And if you have someone on your team who has low self-worth but is willing to work on it through training and coaching, then give them a chance, invest in them, and support them in claiming their worth. And if you have others on your team who aren't willing to be accountable for their self-worth issues and work on it, then you will probably need to let them go. No matter how much they are selling, no matter how good their skill set may be, no matter how long they've been with you. Why? Because more than likely they are bringing toxicity into your team or organization. And what about you? If you can't honestly give yourself an 8 or higher, and even if you can, then it's time to be personally accountable, own how your own insecurities may be leading you to practice fear-based leadership behaviors without even realizing it, and it's time to work on yourself. Even if you gave yourself a 10, we always have to keep working on ourselves. Knowing your purpose for your life can often be a great place to start this journey. And we have courses that can help you find your purpose and your self-worth within. When you become a member of WorldBlu, we have courses that teach you all of this. I've seen dramatic and meaningful transformations in people, leaders all over the world when they realize that they really are a 10 and start leading themselves from a place of completeness rather than from a place of trying to become good enough and trying to prove themselves, right? We have to end the epidemic of low self-worth leadership globally, which causes much of the fear that we see in our world today. Remember, you are a 10 and everyone else is too. The more we focus on that, the more we lead ourselves and others from a place of freedom rather than fear and control. Understanding your worth can radically transform the way you lead yourself, your team, even your family, and your organization. Freedom-centered leadership starts with knowing you are loved and you have infinite worth, and everyone else does too. All right, let's take a look at our second myth. The second myth is that leadership is about empowering others, okay? Well, the truth is, freedom-centered leadership is about owning your power, and helping others do the same. Fear-based leaders operate with a power over others mindset and skill set. For them, power is based on fear, and they exert it over others. This fear-based power approach looks like the following behavior. It can look like passive-aggressive behavior, abusiveness, trying to provoke change through intimidation, extreme competitiveness, pride, mercilessness, and a lack of self-government or ability to self-manage. When as a leader, you aren't in your power, and when people on your team aren't in their power, then you have more drama, unfulfilled potential, wasted time, more confusion, and quite frankly, higher turnover. And you need more and more managers to manage others because they aren't in their power and therefore they can't effectively self-govern. But freedom-centered leaders aren't about power over others. They don't use fear to get control over others. Freedom-centered leaders are all about owning their power and helping others on their team do the same. So what does this look like? Well, freedom-centered power looks like frank, open, and honest communication, being loving, acting from that place of love, inspiring change through actual real leadership, collaboration, humility, grace, and an ability to self-govern. Freedom-centered leaders understand that real power does not come from fear, but from being loving, principled, and having integrity. Freedom-centered leaders who are in their power have a backbone. They are not pushovers, my friend. They aren't intimidated into following the herd. They think for themselves, do what is right, and act in a way that will help unleash the power in their team and organization with incredible results. Let me give you an example of what the freedom-centered CEO of a WorldBlu certified freedom-centered organization did to own his power and help his employees do the same. A multinational IT company had 120,000 employees, and their CEO, Vineet, was completely transparent with them during the Great Recession of 2008. He reached out beyond his executive team and let his employees know that they had to find a way to save $100 million or people would have to be let go. The company's employees came up with hundreds of ideas, and they acted on 76 of these ideas. And as a result, the company didn't save $100 million, they saved $260 million, and no one lost their job. By owning his power, not acting from fear, and helping others in his organization unlock their power within to solve their problems together, they were able to completely turn around the struggling company. No one lost their job, and everyone discovered their power within. That is owning your power, and that's freedom-centered leadership. Let's take a look at the third myth. The third myth is leaders hold people accountable. But the truth is, freedom-centered leaders practice Ubuntu, which is about accountability to each other. Fear-based leaders hold people accountable in a blaming and intimidating way. Well, let's be honest, they often don't hold people accountable, including themselves accountable at all. They're too interested in being popular or afraid of conflict, instead valuing self-interest above having a backbone and doing what's right. But freedom-centered leaders take a different approach. They understand the power of Ubuntu. What's Ubuntu, you may be wondering? Well, I'd never heard of it until 2004, when I went to South Africa to study democracy and leadership there. While there, I had the opportunity to meet a very well-respected businesswoman named Wendy Lucas Bull, who ran the retail division of the largest bank in South Africa. She had won multiple awards for the successes she and her team had achieved together in a post-apartheid era. I met with her on the 10th floor of her offices overlooking Johannesburg and asked her how she did it. She said she did it with one word, Ubuntu. I asked her what Ubuntu, a unique word to South Africa, meant, and she told me, Ubuntu means I can only be at my best if you are at your best, and you can only be at your best if I'm at my best, because we are one, because we're connected. She told me that Ubuntu is about mutual accountability. Just like a winning sports team that relies on each player to put in the training, be mentally prepared, eat and sleep well, and show up ready to win, a team committed to Ubuntu understands that they must show up at their best so that their fellow teammates can be at their best too. In short, living Ubuntu requires self-knowledge. Why? Because you have to know what it takes to be at your best, and then you have to live it. For me, showing up at my best each day means I need time for prayer in the morning, I need a good workout at some point in the day, I like to eat healthy food, get good rest, and I gotta have some dark chocolate with sea salt, if you hear me. Okay, living Ubuntu means that you also have to have healthy boundaries so that you can be at your best. Why do healthy boundaries matter? Because I know my team and our clients are counting on me to show up at my best each day so that they can be at their best. And for me, having healthy boundaries around my time and my energy allows me to achieve this. In fact, each week at our team meetings at WorldBlu, we take several minutes to recognize when someone was living their Ubuntu, making it possible for other members of the team to show up at their best, achieve their goals, and get it done. It's a powerful and positive way to remind each other that we're all connected and all accountable to each other. And that's what freedom-centered leaders do. One of my favorite stories of a company understanding their mutual Ubuntu to each other is a story that Rich, the freedom-centered CEO of a WorldBlu certified freedom-centered organization, told me one day. Rich's company, Menlo Innovations, is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They have about 60 employees and they do software development. Rich told me how he was showing another CEO around their office one day and telling him about their freedom-centered leadership approach to running their organization. The visiting CEO then asked him, "Who are people accountable to then?" Rich then stopped in the middle of their open office and said to them, "Let's ask them." "Hey team," he shouted out. Everyone in the company instantly stopped what they were doing. "Hey Rich," they shouted back. "Who are you accountable to?" he asked them. The visiting CEO thought they would point at Rich, the CEO, but they didn't. Instead, they pointed to each other. They knew that they could only be at their best if the members of their team were at their best. They knew they were accountable to each other. They were living their Ubuntu. And that's what freedom-centered leaders understand too. It's not about holding people accountable in some top-down authoritarian way. Rather, it's about helping each person on their team be at their best because they understand that they are connected to each other's success. That's Ubuntu, and it's a powerful, proven, and successful way to lead. So now that we've debunked 3 massive leadership myths for the truth about leading with freedom rather than fear, let me give you the shortcut to what freedom-centered leaders know that fear-based leaders don't. They understand the 3 core attributes of leadership that, if practiced, will get you on the fast track to leadership success with yourself first, and then with your team and organization. Those 3 leadership attributes that get to the core of almost every leadership skill you will ever need, my friends, are love, which is self-worth, power, which is our ability to self-govern, and Ubuntu, which is self-knowledge. So you can see it here in our freedom-centered leadership model: power, love, and Ubuntu. And when you choose to consciously and intentionally lead yourself and others from a place of high self-worth, being in your power and living your Ubuntu while encouraging others to do the same, you will see disengagement, low morale, drama, and distraction turn around. I know because we've taught freedom-centered leadership to top leaders from 65 countries worldwide. And those who genuinely practice freedom-centered leadership see remarkable transformations in themselves and in their teams. So now, as a leader, you have a choice. You can continue to struggle with low self-worth, unintentionally pulling others down, rejecting love, and bypassing opportunities because you think you're not good enough, while allowing low self-worth behavior in those on your team, which only further demotivates the high self-worth performers in your organization. You can lead people with power over fear, trying to intimidate them into complying with what you want them to do, only further creating drama, resentment, and anger. And you can continue to show up at work exhausted, feeling poorly about yourself, and only bringing a small percentage of your best to the table each day, wondering why others don't really want to work with you. Or you can make a different choice as a leader. You can choose to know in your heart that you really are a 10 and act like it, leading yourself and others from a place of completeness, freedom, and possibility. You can own your power, stand up for what you know is right, and respectfully say what you need to say. And you can take good care of yourself, get the rest and exercise you need, create healthy boundaries, learn when to say yes and when to say no, and live your Ubuntu, being the kind of indispensable leader who everyone loves to work with. The choice is yours. You can lead yourself and others with freedom or fear. I hope you choose to lead with freedom. Thank you.